All right. Hey, everybody, or anyone who's listening. We haven't done one of these for a while, but I'm Lauren. I'm the owner and founder of Aspire Rugby, and I talked Will Crawford into joining me for a catch up. We have never met in person, but as I mentioned before, Will, we've been in each other's orbits for a bit, and I am really glad to catch up with you and hear what you said before when we were chatting before this, which is like what your roadmap has been, what moves you've made to make it onto the MLR roster. I think that's an extremely difficult thing to do, and yet a goal that a lot of people have. So thanks for jumping on with me. Will Crawford, you want to introduce yourself and or share anything about rugby that has gotten you to where you are now in Chicago?
No, thanks, Lauren. Like, fired up to be with you and to do this. This is exciting. So, gosh, how far back do I go? I guess, I don't know. I guess my men's club rugby kind of started in New Orleans, where I was fortunate enough to jump on with Nola Gold in the inaugural MLR season. Saw no game time, straight up. Really green. I had a lot to learn. I felt like in that year, I grew a ton, kind of fired me up about rugby again, got me really excited about the possibilities of the sport. And I left to finish school. And when I did that, I was coaching a bit and had kind of maybe decided that MLR wasn't in my future anymore. I'd left the league. I'm probably not going to get back, that whole thing. And then shout out to my old roommate, John Ray. He convinced
John
me
who
to
connected us.
He was, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Great guy. And he convinced me to come to Houston because I really wasn't sure what I was going to do rugby wise. Convinced me to come to Houston to try out for their academy, HTX. And I was a bit indifferent at first until I learned that Taylor Howden might be involved and Paul Emmerich and some of these guys that I respected. And so I went out with no expectations, was lucky enough to get invited, decided, sure, why not? And so the last year I've been in Houston playing for HTX. And then about a month into the SaberCat season, I was lucky enough to get called up, which was a thrill. And so again, not making many rosters, but training hard and getting to know the guys and making friends and trying to improve. And then got my first ever game time in an MLR game against Rooney in the second to last game of the season. So, better late than never. And, I loved it, tried to cherish it, got me excited to keep pushing a little bit. And then when the season ended, played sevens this past season with HTX. We got to nationals and had a really good run. And then playing in the Silver Cup. And then when it came time for the fall, I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to do. It was going to be a lighter season at HTX until the spring, from what I understood. And I was looking to kind of get out and test some different waters, try some different competition. And one of my teammates in Houston, Jeff Steele, who also plays for the SaberCat or played for the SaberCats, used to be a Chicago Lion. I guess once a Lion, always a Lion. And then, so he connected me with their coach, Graham Scott, and put the bug in my ear to come up here. And it took me a few weeks thinking about it and trying to get all my stuff in Houston in order. And about 2 weeks ago, I got up here. So now I'm in Chicago. I'm in the team housing, enjoying it, right next to the field. And enjoying playing D1 rugby up here and playing different teams in a place I haven't spent much time. So it's been really cool. But yeah, Chicago Lion now.
I appreciate, what you're describing as far as like taking opportunities as they come, also taking chances when there's not a guaranteed outcome, relocating, all of that good stuff. As I said, before we started recording, that was my experience too. It was you move somewhere and then you relocate again and you work with a new coach or a new team has a position that you can play that they need to fill. So I respect it so much. And you are calling, or you're on the Zoom in Chicago. You were living in Texas and then you started playing rugby in Louisiana.
No, I started playing rugby, if we go all the way back, in Indiana.
Indiana.
Summer camp as a kid, and then high school for a couple of years in Indiana, and then I at Culver Academies, and then I went to University of Arkansas, transferred to Louisiana Tech, and that's where I played my college rugby. And I went from Tech to New Orleans.
Got it.
And so that's kind of how that all happened. Yeah.
And for if anyone's listening that doesn't know, MLR is the men's major league rugby. It's basically like the men's professional rugby league here in the US. And it's, as you can imagine, to be a professional, like a paid rugby player, it's really difficult. Like there's not very many athletes who get that opportunity, and you worked your way onto the roster and got playing time. And so for any athlete that's listening who has similar aspirations, like what would you say to them, I guess?
I think the most important thing is to just get eyes on you. Rugby is a very social sport, and it's a very community-driven sport in America, probably globally as well, where if you work hard and you play the game with the right intentions, and you play in front of the right people, things will start coming your way. Nothing's a handout in this sport, but you can't. One thing that I see people do is resting on their laurels and staying at their club when they have aspirations to get to the next level. And if you're a stud and you've got what it takes, it very well could happen where you're at, but you have to be willing to grind out the travel and maybe uproot and go somewhere uncomfortable. If that means getting in front of this certain coach or playing with these certain players. Being with HTX for this last year, there are a lot of young guys on that team, as well as guys my age and older. We had a few guys that 19, 20, 21, fresh out of high school or right in the midst of their college career. And they always have the question, what do I do? And I'm like, you need to go to an academy. You just have to do it if that's really what you want, or go to a men's club where there are legitimate players in your position that you can learn from and compete with. So for instance, here at the Lions, 2 of our props are MLR props. And, for a young prop to come here to try and learn from them would be a great experience, something like that. You can't stay at your club if you're the starter and you're the top dog, and then wonder why you're not improving or why you aren't getting the calls from other teams like some other people are. You got to go and challenge yourself. And you have to have the humility to do that and look yourself in the mirror. I think that's a big deal too.
Yeah. Yeah. I heard you say a couple of things. I heard you say like, you need to get where there are eyes on you. So coaches and or people who have connections. I also heard you say, is that what you meant?
Yeah, sure. It's the reason why I'm in Chicago for the most part. I could have stayed in Houston and that would have been pretty comfortable. And I would have gotten eyes on from there's a new cadre in Houston with Heineke and the new coach and all that. So that would have been good. But a ton of players come out of Chicago and go to the MLR and other great clubs. There's a ton of old boy and alumni connection up here. It's just getting involved with different communities and having a more well-rounded community. I keep saying it, but yeah, I think that's what it's about. You got to be willing to do that.
Yeah. And the other thing that I heard you say is you have to play with players that are essentially better than you. So playing with one of the most competitive teams, because it's going to elevate, your skill set and your game. So you had mentioned learn from the best, play with the best. So that was the second thing that I heard you say. And then underlying all of that is you have to be willing to move. Do you think that's like the reality of more or less the situation? If you want to get on to or if you want to have an opportunity, you have to be willing to move. Would you say that's true?
I think so. And I don't, I know that's tough and it's a big deal financially, and careers can be put at stake and relationships can be put at stake. But if it's really what you want to do, like if it's something that you want to be a part of, this MLR thing or whatever, then I think it is a bit of a non-negotiable if you're not already in an area that has high level rugby. I played university rugby at a pretty small college that didn't have a ton of resources. I mean, that's the reality. And there have been players that have gone through there that I thought had like legitimate potential to do something if they wanted to. In fact, there was a second row that played there who I begged to go and play at bigger clubs because I thought, he had a high ceiling, and he didn't for a few years. And in this past summer, he came out to a few HTX practices because he got a job in like League City and made the drive over.
Yeah.
And in the few weeks that he was with us, I was like, man, if you were around all the time, the growth you would experience would be insane. And so if it's something, I don't know necessarily what his goals are, but I get asked these questions a lot by younger guys. Since I've been in Chicago, I've had a bunch of 18-year-olds come up and ask me these kinds of questions. And it really is like, be coachable, understand that you don't know everything, play at the highest competition, and yeah, just be willing to sacrifice. It just is what it is.
Yeah. We didn't mention this, but I think I'm curious what you say, and also others might as well. So what positions do you play, and or like I was a utility forward, so I could play several positions, but some got me more opportunities than others. And I'm guessing maybe you have a similar experience, but I'd love to hear from you.
I do. Yeah, that's a good question. Through college, I always played number 8, and then maybe a little bit of second row. And then when I got to New Orleans, I played pretty much only second row, and then flanker a good bit. And then since I've been in Houston and now Chicago, it's been strictly lock. I like it.
Yeah.
Like to maybe jump in at 6 or 7 from time to time. Try since it's been a few years since I've played it, but I think that goes back to just having coachability and being a team first kind of person. Is if you go to a team and they're like, hey, we need a second row, and you feel like playing flanker, we'll play second row. It's just, if like Chicago didn't need a flanker, they needed a lock.
Yeah.
And so I'm a lock, and I'm happy to do that. So that's another part of it for sure.
Yeah. I was curious because that was my experience too, is like being willing to play something that maybe wasn't my favorite. But knowing that I could get better at it, I could have a lot more opportunities. So yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
Well, as we wrap up, I appreciate you chatting with me and sharing your experience. What is like one more thing that you would want like young rugby players to know, like as far as advice or a tip to help them create opportunities for themselves, or I guess to your point, like a roadmap for moving up into the ranks?
No, that's a good question. No matter where you are, obviously, you need to be watching rugby and making sure that you're getting film of your games, and always just trying to better yourself. But I think the main thing, and this is going to sound a bit cliche, is just remember why you play this game. It's because it's fun. It's a good time. You're with your friends. You have an opportunity to be really physical and borderline angry and violent with other people, and still create friendships and have fun, post-match afterwards. You can travel the country, you can travel the world, you can meet people, you can start a career, you can form relationships that are like stronger than any that you might ever have otherwise. So don't forget what the intangibles that make rugby so special and why it's such a unique game. And then apart from that, just work hard and like truly have a conversation with yourself. What are your goals? Be realistic. Like look yourself in the mirror and have an honest conversation with yourself. Reach out to people you respect to give you honest feedback about everything, athleticism, your skills, what can I work on, all these things. If you approach it with the humility and the introspection of somebody who is truly trying to get better and improve themselves, then the sky's really the limit. You can play for some amazing invitational teams. You can make the MLR. You can find a D1 club and set roots and push for a national championship and grow. And there's you can go abroad and play for a great club. There's so many opportunities. You just really need to look at the big picture, I think.
Yeah. Well, I am impressed by the fact that you've stayed healthy and made it and created these opportunities for yourself. It's a really difficult thing, and I applaud you for that. And I'm really grateful that you jumped on with me, and hoping that lots of younger rugby players sort of take your advice and are able to maneuver the way that you've done.
Yeah, no, I thanks for setting this up. This has been awesome. And anybody listening, you can reach out to me and ask more questions if you got them.
How do they reach out to you, Will?
I'm not going to give my number out, but you can get at me on like Instagram, Will_Crawford 53.
Perfect.
And happy to talk with anyone that's curious about whatever. So
cool. Well, I would love to chat with you for just another minute or so after I wrap up this recording, but thank you again.
No problem. This was awesome.